Hey guys, welcome back. This is my getting ready for launch video. It's the build I'm going to be rolling with on the 25th during the head start when everybody else gets online. It's probably the one I'm going to have some fun with in the early days. I might not stick with it, but we're going to have to wait and see what changes we actually get between now and then. This was originally designed to be my beta weekend 3 video. I was forced to change that because during the stress test or before the stress test, they changed the momentous greatsword trait down the arms tree, and they made it quite compulsory for somebody that gets involved in a lot of big battles or likes moving around a lot like I do. So this quite unique building up your toughness, building up your stability approach that I actually had by using some of the defense tree moves basically just got robbed away from me, and I had to slap it back in arms in a much more generic approach. That said, some of the new changes really do encourage a little bit of uniqueness in the arms tree. The standard trees, the strength tree and the bottom tree, they're actually pretty standard. I mean, you obviously pick up the condition removal, you obviously pick up the greatsword damage increase, you obviously pick up the speed increase and the mobile strikes, the ability to break any immobilize with your movement skills that are standard. But the arms tree becomes really, really fun. Based on the way you set the arms tree up, it now lets you to stack 3 things really, really well. You can stack Fury, which is standard. Just through all the crits you do, apply some Fury. It lets you stack Vulnerability using some of the greatsword moves and some of the crits that you do. And the third thing's actually stacking bleeds. Now, obviously, Fury and Vulnerability, they're the obvious major traits. You pick up the 33% chance to get Vulnerability, and the Momentous Greatsword, which gives might on every single, might on every single critical hit. Momentous Greatsword, now the big change which we talked about earlier that screwed me over, it reduces all Greatsword cooldowns by 20%. If you're big on AoE, the reduction in the Whirlwind attack, the Blade Trail, I believe it's called, the throw in your sword, that's really, really weird. And the rush ability is really useful for dishing out a bit more damage, as well as 100 blades, but not really many people can manage to get that off successfully every 6.5 seconds anyway. The traits that are weird now is the bleed ones. Now you've got, in the tree, if you pick it all up to 25 points, you've actually got a 10% increased damage on any target that's bleeding. That's great, except you don't apply bleeds with a warrior, unless you really commit to it. So you pick up another major trait which says bleeds last 50% longer. Then you take note of the fact that you've got a minor trait which means 1 in 3 crits add a bleed. Only for a couple of seconds, but they add a bleed. Then on your weapon you chuck this sigil. This actually means that through your minor traits, through your sigil, you have a 93% chance of applying a small bleed every time you crit. This whole build comes out at about 22% crit chance plus Fury, 42% crit chance. That's pretty good if you can keep a bleed up, giving you a passive 10% damage. Especially since you don't really have to work for it, it just happens as you play. You make the effort to keep Fury up and monitor Fury well, and you get a nice damage increase, and you do a little bit of condition damage as well, which is never so bad. Oh yeah, rune-wise, just took 6 runes of strength in there. They give you a nice passive 20% might duration, which really helps you stack in the might. In terms of utility skills, I've kind of given you an absolute nuts array. Right at the top, I've got the most aggressive style of utilities that really go with this build, and at the bottom, it's much more defensive. It's much more about self-control. The 2 things that are consistent throughout is the heal. I always use the condition removal heal, purely because it's great for getting bleeds off, and you haven't got another way to do that reliably. The next one's Bolas. 20 seconds cooldown on a 4-second immobilize is absolutely brilliant. The next one, it's the moves that switch around a little bit. I tend to mix and match between the Signet of Rage, Bull's Charge, Fury, Stand Your Ground, and the War Banner a little bit. I only actually chuck in the Signet of Doylak or something number 5 just for a bit of a laugh. It's purely about finding a balance between the knockdowns and control of the enemy with the Bull's Charge, the burst damage from the Frenzy, and the ability to actually have a stability buff. It's a tough choice trying to pick between all of these. Personally, I use setups 2 and 4 the most. If you know you're going to get into major fights every now and again, Bull's Charge, Frenzy, and Warbanner are nice. If you come up against a class or a player who's really good at controlling, you've got the ability to pop down the Warbanner, and that is really nice. If you're playing against a bit of a higher quality team, number 4 seems to work well for me. I've got the ability to knock down, I've got the ability to immobilize, but I can just flick that 8 seconds of stability on at any point, and I do still have the massive damage increases that you get from Signet of Rage, especially now since the cooldown's actually dropped to 60 seconds, and it still applies all the buffs for 30 seconds, plus extras if you've actually got extras in there. It's personal choice. Obviously, if you're more aggressive a player, stay near the top of that list. If you want to play more defensive, or you're playing against a lot of Guardians, or a lot of Mesmers that tend to stun you a lot, knock you back, knock you down, do go slightly further down the bottom of the list. In terms of equipment then, you've actually got the Soldier's Amulet just like I had last time. It's a nice balance between power, health, and toughness for that damage reduction. It works best for me. Now, if you're absolutely nuts and want to do some massive damage, you could use Berserkers here, but it's just not something I feel comfortable using. I'd much rather take the Soldier's Amulet in case I get focus fired. It gives me a lot more survivability, but it does drop your crit chance by about 30%. Berserker's Duel is the duel I've gone for. I could have gone for a Soldier's again here. It's just personal choice. It's just a duel. There's not a massive amount of difference either way. Statistics-wise, then, by the time you've chucked all this together, you end up with about 24-25k health, which is about it's in the upper range for the warriors. It is a nice level of health to have. It's not as much as a defensive build or a healing build is going to have, but it is still nice. It's definitely in the upper health range of all overall professions. Your overall armor sits at 2757. That is absolutely massive, but it's not as high as a warrior's could be. Like I said, the defensive build I was using last time actually took me up to nearly 3k. It may have actually been slightly over 3k, so the damage reductions were huge. I think it was actually about 3200. So I was taking next to no damage, but that's not really viable if you want to do that. If you want to have that level of resilience and be able to dish out the damage as well. No healing bonuses then this time round. Buff duration standard. You keep might up a little bit longer, which is always nice. Huge power with nearly 2200 power. Obviously, you've got the passive might on top of that. You're looking at anywhere between 3 and 6 stacks of passive might, depending on just how good you are at controlling the Greatsword. So you add, I believe it's 35 power on for each stack of might at level 80. So that is nice. You get a little bit of a boost there. Crit chance sits around 21-22%. You add a shed load onto that because you keep Fury up a lot of the time, so do take that into account. Crit damage, it looks massive there, but it's actually only 25% above normal. It's not your strongest. If you really want to pull that up and you're finding might really easy to keep up, switch the runes of strength for runes of divinity and you'll get a much higher crit damage bonus. So there is that option, but personally I'm going to play it safe on that one at launch and just stick with the might. Condition damage does get a little boost. Your bleeds aren't going to be the basics ticks of 40. I think they're going to sit somewhere around 60, but I could be wrong. So they're going to do a bit more damage per tick, but you're definitely not going to be bursting people down with bleed damage anytime soon. Condition duration's 120%. The bleeds stay up a little longer because of that, and then obviously when you take the major trait, it takes the bleeds up to 170% increased duration. That's just, it's massive for a build that doesn't even use bleeds as a primary damage, just as one to augment what it's already doing. I should have covered everything to do with the build now, but if by some chance I've missed something, do drop a comment below or send me a private message and I'll do my best to get back to you when I can. If you do want to see some more warrior videos, build, sPvP, tournament PvP, world versus world, hopefully duels if they actually get that incorporated sooner or later, do subscribe and I'll do my best to keep content coming out reasonably frequently. For anyone that's playing on Desolation in the EU, I'll see you on the 25th and I hope everybody else has a great launch. Have fun, guys.